Welcome to Leadership Roles, where we believe leadership isn't just a role, it's a way of life. Whether you're leading a team, a community, or simply leading yourself, we're here to help you unlock the rules to lead your life with purpose and impact. I'm Nick Caniglio, joined by my co-host, Marnie Stockman. Together, we co-authored Ted Lasso, and we're thrilled to have Mickey Baines with us as our guest today.
So Mickey has over 25 years of experience building, implementing, and leading enrollment and student success systems and teams. He spent almost a decade leading a successful adult education program at a small private college in Pennsylvania that produced multiple record-setting results in enrollment, revenue, and retention. And it was that experience that helped him transition to consulting, where he assists many institutions expand and grow with the use of technology and sound enrollment strategies. And Mickey's currently serving as president and CRO at Kennedy & Company. And he serves as principal consultant advising institutions through their campus transformations. Now, if you follow Mickey on LinkedIn, like Nick and I do, then you will know all about his son's college search and really what both parents and higher ed can learn about that whole process. We always say that leadership is life. And Mickey is seeing great leadership lessons in his work and in his college search journey. So we are excited to learn from him today. Welcome, Mickey, to the Leadership Rules podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So how do we do? Anything else we should add to the list?
Nope.
That sounds about right.
It sounds really impressive. So I hope I live up to that.
Yeah. Well, we like to start with our biscuits with the boss, some little hard-hitting, fast questions that Ted would ask.
You know, as we're getting there, let me just show you right here.
Yo, you've got biscuits with the boss.
I've got biscuits with the boss right here.
We absolutely encourage crumbs on this podcast. So just eat your biscuits away because they are some crumbly things. So first concert, best concert.
First, I was a child, and I think this is right. Crystal Gale, country, so long time ago.
Yeah.
And that was the first. You said what was the other one?
Best concert.
So let's just say this, and I will do tangents. So you just have to pull me off the tangent. So when it comes to music, I love live music. And those who work with me and know me well know that I have a favorite band, that I've been to many concerts. And so I wouldn't say a single one, but most of theirs. And that would be Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh, yeah.
Huge Hootie and the Blowfish fan. 61, 62 concerts. So,
oh, gosh.
Holy cow.
That's more concerts than I've been to in total. Okay, that's impressive.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. But you got to go to a Hootie show. You got to go to a Hootie show. They're amazing. Love them live.
And is it just Hootie and the Blowfish, or will you go see Darius Rucker by himself as well?
Maybe 5 of those 62 are Darius solo. I do see him. So I mean, he'll play 3 or 4 Hootie songs normally in those sets.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but They just had a tour this past summer, but right before the pandemic, they had a tour because they don't tour every year anymore. And I think I went to 8 shows in that tour. I mean, that's
wow.
That's a lot.
That's super fan,
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
all right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, absolutely. Yeah.
Dog or cat?
Dog.
Do you have one?
I have 2.
2.
I have a golden retriever, and then we have a mixed rescue that we got right at the onset of the pandemic. Yeah.
We've learned Mickey goes all in with everything, whether it's Hootie and the Blowfish, dogs.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I tell you, with this dog, we our second one that we adopted, we got him from one of those prison rescue programs where the inmates will train them for a period of time. What I will say is that I'm not so sure what they trained him on, other than escaping, because he really wants to get out. When he wants to go to the house, he's going to go. So we have to be very careful in the house and keep it like baby gates around the house so he can't get to an exterior door where someone might be walking in, because he's just going to go.
We got a runner. We got a runner.
We do. So, yes.
All right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you have one, but can you isolate down to one favorite Ted Lasso quote?
Oh, no. It's not a quote. My favorite moment is that season when they lost season 1, it's Ted's line, everybody, it's okay to be sad. But we're all sad, but but not sad and alone. That, that's you're not alone. And I think that's the one that really stands out most to me.
So as we transition to slightly harder questions, the last biscuit with the boss, leadership, more art or more science?
Oh, hey. Hmm. It's both, and depending upon the moment, depends upon how you slide the scale. How much do I want to go more in art? Do I want to go more in science? Because so much of this is with people, and there's an art to understanding and then using that understanding to know how to navigate with someone in a partnership to guide them where you ultimately need them to be for your organization. And so to me, there's an art to it, but they have to play together. And I think there's times I just might slide that scale on one side or the other a bit more.
I was a little worried when you started, Mickey, but you aced that question. That was fantastic. Okay, let's get into it. So obviously you have your favorite Lasso moment. So we share a love for Ted Lasso. And although it's a fictional TV show, Ted's journey with AFC Richmond, it's an incredible example of leadership done right, leading with positivity, fostering connections, transforming an organization really from the inside out. And as a random aside, we're at the point of the football season where I'm a New York Jets fan and I desperately want Ted Lasso to somehow, get his magic to go to the Jets. But bring it back to your experience. When you think about organizational transformation, right, like Ted did, right? He completely transformed AFC Richmond. Just simple question, where do leaders need to start? Simple question, probably very complex answer. But can you give me some insights, based on your experiences and about organizational transformation and how you get started?
There's several different people that'll give you slightly slants to it. So you can do a Simon Sinek and say start with why. Mm-hmm. We can go to a Jim Collins and do a first who then what. Mm-hmm. And I forget the other authors, but it's like who and then how or something like that.
Oh, Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan.
Yeah. And so I think I want to go with why and then who. I think, I need to know for me, what's my calling? Why am I trying to do this work? And I've got that mission and that drives me. And then in terms of the folks around me that are helping me achieve that, I want to go to who. I think knowing the people around you, because the how specifically has to be, in my world, built around the people with me. There's not a single how to go do this. It's going to depend upon the strengths of that group so that we can form together to play. I mean, the concept, if I have, stick with sports. And so how many players on the pitch on a team? 11, 10?
Yep, 11, the starting 11.
Including the goalie, right? So 11. If you change one of those players, so I take someone off my team and I put someone else on my team in that person's place, I don't have that group of 10 with a new person. I have a new team. We have to bring that together. And so, I want to know who I have, and then I build my plan for transformation based upon that group. That to me is really important.
Well, and that's, in my mind, it speaks to the Ted Lasso's bit of the season when they brought Zava in, right? And even though Zava was the best the best player, right? There were times when they're like, we don't need him, we have everything we need right here, because it changes the team dramatically.
Correct.
Especially if you've got that human where everything's got to go.
That's right. It's very, but they lost in that moment, who they were as a team and thought, well, here's this person who does X, Y, or Z. That was very much the how, not the who, and understanding the impact of a person on the culture.
Yeah. Have you, I think of some of my past experiences where I felt like I was part of an organization where senior leadership was really just trying to implement change for the sake of change, really, and forgot about, bringing the rest of the team along. You mentioned buy-in, I think, earlier. Have you seen any other pitfalls or, personally, or just read about any where change management was really done wrong and have taken lessons that you can share with the rest of us?
So most of my work consulting is fixing problems, right? And Marnie, as you read my bio, there's a lot in there about technology. And so I do root a lot of my work in technology. And just like some people might want to implement change for the sake of change, a lot of times people will want technology for the sake of technology.
Yeah.
But, technology, just like change, is there to support the work you need to do to execute something. And so when I'm coming to where there's maybe a problem with technology, 98% of the time, and that's not scientific, that's just me saying it's people, not technology, causing the problems. And it could be people guided the technology implementation, and thus there are technical problems, but it's rarely true problems with the technology. It's saying something like, I want this out of the box. Well, sure, we can give you this out of the box, but then you are taking everything you're supposed to do and try to fit it into this box, the way it's designed, and allowing for no customization. Hopefully, you're doing something that's unique to you, because doing it unique to you helps you maximize the outcome and the results from that. And if you do it just in a generic standard way, then you're going to lose that uniqueness to it that should hopefully provide some good outcome. And when it comes to change, I don't know that I've ever gone into an organization that's done change for the sake of change without it being technology or something like that. But, it's got to be for why. I want to change the outcome. And in order to then achieve that changed outcome, what needs to be reverse engineered? What else needs to occur? Does it mean I need a change of people? Do I need different processes? What is it? Ultimately, it's outcome focused. What is it we want to really do? If you think sports, and let's just flip to football since you mentioned the Jets, I would suggest, because if you listen to any team talking, especially in the beginning of the season, we want to win the Super Bowl. And some people, we got to focus one game at a time. I want to win. We got to, I would suggest if you look at someone like Bill Belichick, and I'm not a huge Bill Belichick fan, to be clear. I'm an Eagles fan, and we do not like.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Patriots, all right. So, but I'm not a big Bill Belichick fan. However, but I might suggest he wasn't trying to win the Super Bowl. He wasn't trying to win the next game. He was trying to build something that would last and keep going. Like it was bigger than the Super Bowl, bigger than a season, bigger than a game. We are building, a legacy. We're building, the word escapes me. The team that wins. Dynasty. Yes, we're building a dynasty, and that's the difference. And I'm not wanting to change for the sake of change. I want something that's everlasting in place. And what do I need to do that in my world? That's just how my mind goes toward it. No, I also think that's what Ted Lasso is doing. He's not, he's not trying to win the championship. Winning the championship is an outcome of successfully moving that organization to being the dynasty that it can, so that everyone is working to their maximum possible potential together. That's when you get that ultimate invention. When I first left higher ed, I started consulting on my own before I merged into Kennedy & Company. And the name of my company was Fourth Dimension Partners. And the whole purpose of that name was built from the success I had as my team as a practitioner, because we were breaking enrollment records, we were breaking retention records. And it was this ultimate level of success I felt that we were having. And to me, it was more than a third dimension. It was this feeling, this aura that we created. And that's what Ted Lasso was creating. This whole, I don't know how to describe all of that together, but it was that magical moment of those players coming together truly as one to play. That's when I know you've reached that. And that's what we're working toward. And the trophies and all the bonus checks, that's just supplemental benefits or pieces that come as outcomes from the actual work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think that, so much what you're talking about, or that you alluded to in that response, not all of it, but, leaders have to rebuild or shift a culture. And it's so hard to do that when they're stuck in old habits. You talk about bringing it back to the Jets, right? It's the old habits of, we're going to win the Super Bowl. The goals were all wrong. It wasn't about building the foundation. That's what Ted Lasso did, really. Yep. You're 100% right. He didn't say, ultimately he did. He said, we're going to win the whole, blah, blah thing. But his whole notion was changing the culture, getting rid of the old habits, the bad habits, changing the way people think about things and giving them a why. And, the whole notion of successfully implementing change touches on all that. And I think you did a really good job explaining that to us. So thank you.
So it's funny that you mentioned Jim Collins. One of the first leadership books that I ever read was Good to Great. And one of the things that great leaders do, and your Belichick line, I mean, I'm a Ravens fan, so also.
Yes.
But we'll continue with the conversation. Yeah. If Bill's listening, we apologize. Feel free to join the podcast and you can
That's right. Your piece. There's your invite.
You are cordially invited.
Yes.
But one of the things is that a great leader, as opposed to a good leader, builds the company for long-term success for after they leave, right? So if you're building for that long-term, you are aiming to do that. And one of the things that, because we've talked to you multiple times, that we've talked about with you is the whole notion of leading yourself out of a job, right?
Oh,
and so you don't have to be leaving the company. The whole notion of organizational transformation is kind of at the highest level in a company, but at any level, especially going from an individual sole contributor, maybe to your first management position, to move from good to great, you really do need to lead yourself out of that role. So what are some tips and tricks for folks along the way that are maybe in their first leadership role, or they're aiming for their first role and are going to have to work themselves out of their current job?
So if you're moving into a role of leadership, I think the first key is understanding what value you bring and where those strengths and weaknesses lie, where you get most excited and joy and fulfillment from the work. And then you need to know everything that needs to be done. So you know where you plug into the everything. And then how do you then fill the roles around you so that everything's covered? I think that's an incredibly important piece. I can't say it started with great intent, but one of the things I love about consulting that fits me really well is I'm not a manager. I am not the person that can come into a company and for a long period of time manage something. I can direct things, but I really like to grow things. And once we've grown to a certain point where it can be sustaining, it needs some level of management. That's not me. I need to move to what's next. And so I can get bored in a position if I'm there for a long period of time. I need some form of change to keep me excited. I've been fortunate that change for me has been moving up, but it doesn't have to be. It can be moving laterally to other areas of an organization. And so I think the key is understanding, who you are as a leader and what you bring, and that way you know where to start plugging in. I used to always think, someone would take over, a new person comes into a company and takes over, and then you see the levels underneath that person change. People start to leave, and they must not have gotten along. Well, that's not necessarily true. I don't know. You take the personalities out of it. I think what you find is there are duplicated strengths on the team that create conflict and gaps that are left uncovered, and that might drive some of that change. So if I were to go to a brand new team, I might not find that within that team, when I add myself to the mix, that everything's covered or there's a lot of overlap. Now, you got to, what does Collins talk about the bus? You got to have the right people on the bus and in the right seats on the bus. Yep. Well, my first step is to try to get those around me to work in other seats, and so we can test to see how it works, so that there's not ultimately any change. Sometimes that's capable, and sometimes you're not capable of doing that. But I think knowing that, because I'm thinking of other people I've seen step into leadership roles where we've, for some of our clients, when they've stepped into a director level position, you don't have to be the person that the last director was. Your personality may not be the same, but the key is knowing what the differences are, so you know what gets plugged in. I think that's just really essential for those first steps. You don't have to solve it right away, but you have to know that it has to be solved right away.
So you brought a couple more things to mind. First, in the book, one of our rules is don't be a seagull. And a seagull is sort of the visionary leader that would come in and have all of these new ideas. They love change, maybe for the sake of change. And then they just say, this should happen. And they don't think about the right people to do the role. They just
Mm-hmm.
expect the team to clean up after themselves. So that kind of came to mind because the first thing you said was you come in and you sort of diagnose who you have. What resources do you already have? What needs to be filled in? You can't just come in and make sweeping global statements of like, we're doing this now. So, the seagull is there, crap all over thing and then leave and somebody else has got to clean it up. So that's what kind of came to mind there.
I've been in this role, like I've been at Kennedy Company for 8.5 years almost at this point. And I jumped into this role in September. New role at the company. The things I've changed, I've not made any sweeping changes at all. We just started to roll in a few additional things and some slight tweaks, but we've not made, that was not, and I already knew the company pretty well. I've been here for a very long period of time, but realistically, I wanted to take some time to learn the areas of the business that I wasn't as closely aligned with or working with daily, and then also use that to start planning for next year. Because we were, this is coming in Q4. A lot of stuff is already happening. Why add to that? Let's plan it out so that we can start anew with this year and then start identifying some things that will change in time that we're going to start tiptoeing and working our way towards to achieve that. So I typically am more of a long play person. I've done some fractional work as part of my consulting where something we need to rebuild and you don't have long term and you have to implement some things, but there still has to be that assessment before you can just jump in. Assessment of people, process, barriers, problems. But I need the people because then that goes back to what we were saying earlier, like that how we address it is going to depend upon the people. I can identify quickly what we want to address, but how we go about it depends upon the people and their strengths and what we're capable of doing.
So I have a bit of just the way I heard you ask the question, Marnie, just something else popped into mind in terms of, people leading themselves out of a job, so to speak, right? And we've worked with I have at least, with a bunch of small companies throughout my career where folks have become accidental leaders, right? They were really good at something functionally. And just the logical next step is we don't want to lose this person. Let's promote them into a leadership type position. And I often found that those people really were reluctant, and I might have been one of these people at one point in my career, right, to start to offload the work that I was doing to my team that I was managing, because in some sense you kind of feel a little bit expendable when you take that leap. It's the right thing to do. I'm just curious if Mickey or you, Marnie, if you've seen that and if you had any advice for some of those people that struggle with giving up that thing that really got them into the position of leadership to begin with.
So I will say right out of the gate, you're very much reminding me when I first was math supervisor. The assistant superintendent had been my boss when I was a teacher. And she said, Marnie, one thing I know about you, and you're just like me, if you want it done right, you think you have to do it yourself. But you are never going to be able to scale if you don't learn how to delegate. So it wasn't like I was trying to teach all of the classes, but in terms of the work that needed to be done on the global scale. And I think I needed to hear that lesson there because for sure, Nick, in our 3 acquisitions, right, when we worked together, that I absolutely fought, sometimes to my detriment, to hold on to work that I should have found a way to give up sooner. I think that's very true.
Okay.
Well, I it's natural for me to lead my way out of a position, and sometimes it's a little scary. But in this change that we just made here, when I moved into this new role, it was time, I think, for me to delegate more. And if you're really building the team up around you, they need more responsibility too as they grow. Most of them will want more, not all of them. They'll want different at some point, but and then what is there to give them? Well, give them more of what I do. Well, then what does that leave me? Well, my job is to create that. My job is to make that happen. And, I think we were there. I was working with one of my favorite colleagues I've ever worked with. And, she and I had been doing this work. She worked at the company before I did. And she came over to the practice I was leading and helped. And, it was time for her to step in and do that. And, it moved me into this role. There's some level of discomfort moving this role because it's not created. There was not necessarily, this is exactly the job description you're going to get. There's a lot of open-endedness there to it. And I would say it probably in the last week and a half, I hit some clarity, just great clarity, like this is exactly what I'm supposed to do. And I don't even remember what book it was in. It may have been one of Collins's book. You've got this great leader who is running a large portion of the company, and then they move into a brand new segment with nothing, and part of what hopefully I'll be able to achieve is to create a new something as part of this role. That's something that it really interests me. I like building and growing things. And I don't know why that wasn't in my mind going into this, but it wasn't. But it's like, you know what, there's this couple of things that we've been tinkering with. This is what this new role has given me the opportunity to do. And it took a little bit of time to figure that out and to understand its role in our priorities of what it can do. And so, finding those gives the purpose. But I'll still say it comes back to the who. If you get the who right, then they're going to need to expand in what they're doing. And if you trust in them as a leader and you give them the authority to go do what they need to do, you will achieve some really good things, and they need more opportunity to grow.
Yeah. So and just to your point, you probably would have not have gotten to that point of clarity that you just got to, right? If you were still busy doing the day-to-day stuff and the stuff that you were working on, right? It's a growth mindset. Sorry, Marnie, I cut you off.
No, that's fine. You said opportunity, right? Because that really is giving you the opportunity to grow. I'm coaching a co-op, a local co-op, doing a leadership development program with them. And they were talking about, if you don't get delegation right, if you don't have the ability to hand off your work, one of two things happen. You either turn into a micromanager, 0.0 of us want to work for that person, right? Yep. Or probably even more detrimental, you just abdicate it. You give it up completely and don't train the folks, to do that work. And so then they're just floundering and unsuccessful. So you're either frustrating them or not setting them up for success. Neither is the right win.
Yeah. The role of having the right vision, if I'm handing off responsibility, I typically am not the one that's going to say, this is how I want you to do this. If it's someone brand new, I might do that to get them to a starting point.
Yeah.
But realistically, it's understanding very clearly what the outcome needs to be. This is what we need this to achieve for us. And this is the role that achievement plays in the next level of achievements that we need to do. And I think that's important. Brene Brown would say, paint it done. What does that really look like? What does done look like? And that communication piece, like that communication is so important. And when we hand someone, here's a task, we might give them the how to do it, but not the why, and understanding the why, because ultimately at some point they're going to be doing the how to do it. And they'll come up to a decision point that we have to make a decision. You may or may not be the person they ask for that decision. But if they don't have the why, they don't have the way to wait and consider the options for that decision that needs to be made to know they're going in the right path.
Yeah. Awesome. So, so we touched on a little bit about organizational transformation, which is really very much leading from the top. We talked about, leading yourself out of a job, a little bit more traditional leaders. I'd love to ask you about those times where we don't have that traditional leadership title, right? Sometimes we refer to as leading from the middle. In your mind, is it possible to influence and drive change when we might not be the ones that are actually calling the shots?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're in the middle, when I was in higher ed, I was in a director level position, had a lot of responsibility for the department that I oversaw in terms of its scale. We work with non-traditional students. And so, everything from the enrollment marketing to the admissions and then the enrollment process, the student success, not teaching in the classroom, but every other aspect except for degree audits and financial aid really fell to us. And so we were a college within the college. We made up 45% of the student enrollment at the time, or maybe 40% of the student enrollment at the time. And I would say for my team, that was a lot of responsibility, and I had a lot of influence for them. But when it came to advocating for, college level resources, I think I was only told no one time of the significant asks. And the way I typically do that, and the way I would coach someone on that is, what is it we're trying to achieve, and let's find one piece of that. Because something you will ultimately want to achieve, you need additional authority and permission for that. But let's find one piece of it. How far can we push the level of authority that you do have, and let's do something with that to implement it, get a result, and then show the result and why it connects to the next ask, not the big ask. You may not be ready for that. One step up until you get to the level where you're trusted. Part of that comes down to trust in leadership to give you that authority, but you need to demonstrate that. And then, in terms of leading others laterally across an organization, people that might say, it still comes back to demonstrate the benefit or the result that you're trying to achieve. If I need someone else to come in and buy in with me, what is the value that they're going to get from it? We have to understand that. So when I was working with a financial aid team, I wanted them to change how they package their process for packaging financial aid for adult students, because it needed to be turned around much faster than they're capable of doing. So, that's a big ask. It's a team of 3 people that covered 1,600 traditional students and another 1,000 non-traditional students. That's a really big ask of that team of 3. So what is it I'm asking to do, and what am I going to get in return? So what if we actually trained our team to take the entry-level calls that come in from our students for you, and that might be 30% of the asks of our students of your entire team is those entry calls. If we knew how to answer those for you, then that's going to give you back a lot of time, and that allows you to change out your process. So then they're going to give you better, student service scores. We're going to take other nonsense calls off your plate. All of that seemed to be, and it's winning them over. And then the next thing I need to ask, they had my back on the ask. Is finding that little circle of influence that you have and just demonstrating results for you and for others, and how it comes in. And then once you do that, to me, either you're trusted and respected or you aren't. Now, I will say that, the one time I said no happened to be the one time that I left not long after. Now, it was not, I didn't leave just because they said no.
If I don't get my way,
I don't have that much ego. That's right. It's not, but we're at the time, this was 10 years ago, we didn't have truly online programs. I knew that we needed online programs. And the college wasn't ready to invest in it. It was not a part of their strategic priorities. I understood that no, because I was going to need some very significant resources. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not someone who's going to manage something. We had reached everything we were going to reach. Everything else we did was good, but it wasn't enough to keep me really fulfilled. And that's ultimately why I chose to leave. But, I pushed to that point. And, when I needed a $200,000 investment, which for this smaller college, that was a lot at the time. I got it. And, I knew it was time for me to leave, because other colleagues at other institutions would say, how did you get them to do that? I had people who had titles much higher than mine that weren't able to get the same piece. And so, it's just a matter of leading, and showing those results. And I forget, it's the Heath brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. They've got that book, Switch.
Yeah.
And I find the bright spots. So find the bright spots. And then I think you read that book. It's about, it's a whole book's about, building and implementing change without authority to do so.
Yep.
And it goes through a process. But, that, I hadn't read the book at the time, but after I read the book, I was able to go back and say, this is what we're doing, and this is why it worked for me. And that's the key. And I've used it so many times since, is finding those little things that we could do and implement to show results. And that builds trust. But the key is owning the result, good or bad. You've got to own it if it's bad too, because there are a lot of risks we took that would say, this is what we did. We wanted to achieve X. We did not achieve X. We achieved Y. It was down 10% less than what we wanted. Here's what we got from it. Here's what we're doing about it to fix that before we come back and do something again. And then when I came back, say, I want this to do Z instead. And this is what we learned last time. And this is what we're going to do differently to ensure that we get it. All of those little pieces demonstrated that I had real reason and a real plan behind it.
Yeah, not just I wanna.
Yeah. Yes. And again, it's coming back. And the key is coming back when it's over to say, you gave me these dollars. You gave me the permission to go do X. This is what we set out to do. And this is what we achieved, good or bad. And the learnings from it, how you're going to replicate and maximize those positive results more, or how you're going to fix the negative results going forward.
Love it.
Oh, I think I have one more question. Nick, do you have anything before I ask my final question?
No, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
okay. So one of the things, this is called leadership rules. So we always like to ask, like, what is a leadership rule by Mickey Baines? What is one that you always follow regardless of the position you're in?
Yep. Never stop growing.
Mm.
Now, you told me you were going to ask me this question before, and I didn't have an answer until just right this moment. To be clear about it.
Oh, that's a bold move.
Yes, and I did, and I just, and I think, but it's the way you worded that question, that regardless of my position, what I'm always saying, and I say it to my clients, and I say it to our team. Always, you have to keep growing. You have to keep moving forward and growing. And so, in our work with clients, in terms, especially around technology, we have this. Jim Collins look to a flywheel model, and the 3 stages to that model: you innovate, you adopt, and you grow. And so we have to build out, we have to adopt what we've built and put into the technology, and then we have to assess and see the results of what we've done to help determine what's next. And then you keep going, you keep going. You have to continue. I mean, in the world of business, if you're not moving forward, you're moving behind, or there's all kinds of different statements and analogies you can throw out there. But realistically, our job is to grow. And the key is understanding your team, how you're performing, knowing a little bit about your market, so you know where you need to grow. You got to have those right priorities in place, but you need to keep growing. And growing doesn't mean more dollars necessarily. It could be new services, and part of growth is letting go of other things. But the key for me, always keep growing.
Well, and to your point, sometimes you have to stop doing other things so you just don't lead to burnout.
Yes.
Which is why you have to learn how to hand off things, etc.
Delegate. And when you think of a flywheel isn't a chart that's going to go straight up. It's this wheel that keeps spinning, but it starts to spin on its own. And so the work you have to do to add the momentum can be less because it's moving on its own. And I think that's part of the key. And you have more people applying their leverage to it, and it makes the wheel easier to turn. So, the key then is not to put friction in place.
Yes, please don't shove a stick in that.
Flywheel. That's right.
So, so this has been very insightful, Mickey. We really appreciate it. And, for those that don't know, we met you several months ago on your podcast. And I know that you, I don't know if you're willing to share this, so I hope this doesn't catch you off guard.
If this gets cut off suddenly, you'll know he wasn't.
My understanding is that you've got a new podcast in the works, and I was wondering if you wanted to share some of that.
Yes. So I've got my industry focused podcast I've had for quite some time, but you mentioned we're doing this college search with our son. And we are a family that when we go in, we go all in. And so we've toured over 20 campuses at this point, or we'll be definitely over 20 by this spring. We have a couple more to go. And we've visited a lot, all up and down the East Coast. I would say mostly in the Northeast, but we've learned a lot. And I've learned a lot. I mean, I'm a consultant in this space, and I've been working in higher ed for 25 years, and I've learned a lot, mainly through the lens of a parent, and it's just given me a different perspective. But there's so much that he's learned, my wife has learned, I've learned. We've been thinking, what else can we do? And I started sharing on LinkedIn a little bit about the search, mainly from the consultant side. And I can't get through a week without someone coming and bringing it up to me that they've read it, saw it, and have loved it. And we just look for a way, like, how can we expose this to other folks and give some advice and help people find information. So we created a podcast, a family podcast. I will be the primary voice on it, but our son will be joining me. He also is the production person behind the scenes, editing, and he came up with the logo for it. It's called the College Compass. It's tentatively, I think the tagline was like Parents Guide to the college search process. But someone gave me an idea today. It's like the Family's Guide, because it's not just for parents, it's for students. And they're all of those students' loved ones that are helping support their search process. But there's so many things about it that the search that some people know, and they might know just a little bit. But there's so much more, whether it's, the cost, or, how do you schedule a tour? What should you be thinking about a college tour and open house? And when can you talk to faculty? And, all these little groups, our son has celiac. So that means no gluten at all. Well, when you're thinking about a college experience, that kind of matters. Finding the Facebook group of moms of kids with celiac that are searching for college, all these little nuances to it. There's just things we've learned that we wanted to share with others. So I'm excited. Yeah, we just
I'm excited too.
That's our weekend project. Every weekend we've been making a little progress, and I think start the official recording next week, or maybe this weekend coming. We'll start the recording.
Well, that's just coming off that a couple of years ago with my son. I that resource will be invaluable, and I'm excited to listen to it. How much fun is it to work with your family on creating this whole podcast? That's got to be incredibly fun.
It's a lot of fun. Even though my son's not necessarily one who wants to be on the other side of the camera, but just he's actually in a podcast course in high school right now. Which, give me a break, like.
Right.
Why wasn't I allowed to take a podcast course in high school?
Right.
But so it's just, he's been learning about it. He's been interested in it. And, and it's actually digital communications is really kind of where he's going with his major. So it really aligns well. And that gives him an opportunity to put something on the application essay of some experiences he's garnered and thought process of building it out. The logo was all him. The title was all him. That was, I think an important part for us is if we're going to do this as a family, like I want him to be really involved in it so that he can have ownership and some control over the creative and experience maybe what he might be doing a little bit after he graduates college.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
And we will absolutely, as soon as that's out the door, you let us know. We'll make sure that our audience is
awesome, has
the links and knows how to get there. Mickey, thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
So appreciative. I thought it was insightful, learned some things. This is really good stuff. Can't thank you enough for coming to chat with us.
Can you tell us
Marnie,
where
Nick,
folks
thank you
can
for
find
having me.
you?
Yes. LinkedIn is probably the easiest place. If you just there's my name on the screen. Find that on LinkedIn, and you can connect with me. Follow the campus journey, or I try to be as open and transparent. So anytime folks message me on LinkedIn with questions, I'm happy to give answers and give insight, and hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right.